So you said you were going to go first?
Yes. Oh, you had questions you want to ask us? Or
Yeah, I was going to conduct an interview during our time.
Okay, sound great.
Our time. So whatever y'all want to say, if you have questions for me. Remember, we had set this up as an agreement to do an interview, so.
Exactly.
No problem.
No problem at all. So if you like, you can interview us with questions first, and then we can, whatever questions you have, we can just go from there. Or
so if it's set up as an interview, you can go ahead and ask the questions you like to ask, and we can answer. So that's
all right, then I'll begin.
Right.
So let's just cut right to the chase here, because the reason we met is based on our activities at the abortion clinic.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm interested to know if you feel that there is ever any justification for an abortion.
Let's move first.
Is there ever any justification?
So in the case of rape, in the case of a child being impregnated, fetal abnormality, the health of the woman, those are some of the things, or even economic reasons. Are there any justifications for abortion from your perspective?
Well, the first thing I know I had to do is to, at first I had to take the time to see what abortion is. So I couldn't just go and say yes or no based on how I felt. I didn't think that would be fair or objective about it. And so because abortion is such a big topic, been talking about since 1973. So personally, first I had to go find out what actually is an abortion. What is the process of an abortion? What are all these statistics and what's really going on behind this?
Can you explain your understanding of the process?
So the understanding of the process of an abortion is, and so I've seen videos about it when you see that so a woman is on the table, and then this device goes in here, and you can see in some cases they will suck out the fetus, or they will rip apart the arms and the legs, and they dismantle the baby, and then they suck the rest of the portions of the baby out.
Do you know that's a late-term abortion that you're just describing? That's not an early-term abortion.
So what would be the difference? So an abortion. So the issue is there ever a reason for you to have an abortion? And we're making a decision about abortion based on external factors, based on whether I was raped, based on whether I can afford it, based on what I can personally do.
Or what if you will die as a result of it? Those are, that's viable. It's viable. It happens.
In fact, Arkansas has the third highest rate of maternal mortality in this country.
The next thing is about death. But what if you can also die having an abortion? That's also the same thing.
Correct. Statistically speaking, though, they're vastly different. We're talking about something that's an outpatient procedure done so many times routinely. The odds of actual harm coming to the woman are slim to none.
Less than 1% if it's done within the first trimester.
Yeah.
So there are different types of abortions that do occur. You have a medication abortion where a woman takes a pill one day and takes another pill the other day, causes the uterus to contract and expel the products of pregnancy. The other term is what they call a D&C, dilation and curette, and this is a little bit later. There's a certain point at which the medication abortion probably won't work. So a little later they will go in with a device, and they basically make sure to scrape away all of the pregnancy bits, the amniotic sac, everything, and then suck it out. And then there's the one that's a late-term abortion, which you described, in which you do see evidence of fetal remains. And those typically occur as a result of either extreme risk to the mother, who might die by giving birth to this fetus, or there's an extreme fetal abnormality. So it's been discovered, for example, that the organs are developing outside the body and the fetus will not survive, or other types of abnormalities. So there are different types of abortions that occur.
So there's another concern about, is a woman who's coming in, is she being presented with the risk of abortion? Because when you look at the risk of abortion, if she's going in with the idea that it's no big deal, it's just tissue, and it's my body.
So when you say risk, are you talking about the risk to the fetus or the risk to the
Both.
woman? Because the risks to the woman are next to none in the first trimester. Having your wisdom teeth taken out is riskier. Having a colonoscopy is riskier. And these are things that are done all the time.
And
So statistically speaking, that is a correct statement.
And I can speak even for my pastor's wife who had an abortion, who preached on this, talks about the exact same thing, and how it affects her mentally, emotionally, financially afterwards, it had to go back to the doctor, has to begin to bleed because of the procedure she had taken. But all these other factors that she has to go through is not presented. What they go in thinking, if I pay, say, $300, I can remove the problem and I'm free and everything is okay. Never talking about how do you get into that position. Never speaking of that.
Everybody knows that it's sex that causes pregnancy.
Exactly. Okay,
Everybody knows that.
Yeah, we know that, but we don't want the responsibility of it. Our problem is responsibility. That's one of them.
I think a lot of people have sex just for pleasure.
Oh, but
most of them do, and they don't want to get pregnant simply because of that.
Well, okay, we're not talking about pleasure. Okay, pleasure, but eating too much candy. We don't want teeth decay. We want to eat a lot of candy, but we don't want the responsibility. It's responsibility is one thing we're talking about. As a man, they take from a man perspective, a lot of men don't want the responsibility if they took pleasure and got a woman pregnant. He departs responsibility. Same thing as a woman. There's a responsibility in everything we do. And the biggest one of the biggest discussion about abortion, and when you talk to people, especially with the black community, is the responsibility that comes along with it. Everything we do, if you have an abortion, and you're looking at the baby as a it versus a he or a she, then you want to remove the responsibility of ripping it out or sucking it out. But when you begin to look at the baby as an actual baby, then the responsibility of doing it will hit you. We're talking about responsibility of not just, you actually have two bodies.
So let me see if I can recap for just a second.
We have one or two.
If
Sure,
I
please.
understand what you're talking about, it seems like, you haven't actually stated it, but it seems like you believe there's never any justification for abortion. Is that a correct statement?
We will go towards that direction more than anything else.
Okay.
Yes.
And the other thing is,
and
you
we
believe
say-
that life begins at conception,
We would say yes.
and there are two
Two
separate
bodies.
bodies. And
You have a fully developed body, and within a fully developed body, you have an undeveloped body. It needs time. And we choose, it's a choice. You're making a choice to say, I don't want to give you time to develop. Because if you give the baby time, it will look just like you, and so forth. So we're deciding to say, you don't deserve the time to develop. You don't deserve the time to grow.
or we might be saying, my life situation right now does not make it possible for me to be able to care well for a child.
Okay, we can
And
talk.
I also don't want to take the risk of pregnancy and the burdens and the stresses and the pain of pregnancy. Why should a woman have to do that when in fact the fetus is entirely dependent on her for the development, as you mentioned.
Yes, ma'am.
And so in a sense, the woman is giving the gift of life or not. It is a gift, it's not an entitlement. Do you see what I'm saying? It's kind of like if you needed a kidney in order to live, and I was the only person on a planet who had a compatible kidney. Our laws say that I don't have to give it up, even if it means that you die. That is a recognition of what's called bodily integrity.
Okay, may I make a comment?
Go ahead.
Okay, if you have children, my child is totally dependent on me and the mother. On everything. That child cannot survive without their parents caring for them and using my body to work, give food, take a bath, instruct you. Is totally, completely dependent on the parents. You leave the baby outside by itself, say, I don't have to take care of you, it would die.
Right. The difference between the two is that when a woman is carrying a fetus, it is her body that she is putting at risk. It's her life that she's putting at risk.
May I respond? And I put my body at risk when I have to go to work. I put my body at risk when I have to make these decisions. I sacrifice my mental capacity, my heart, and everything for my baby because I know you can't survive.
Sure, and that is an absolutely legitimate choice that you make.
Exactly.
But in my point of view, it's also a legitimate choice to decide when and how and whether or not to become a parent, regardless of the consequences of sex. Because you can have even the most arduous practitioners of birth control can fail and result in an accidental pregnancy. If people are going to make bad parents, they should not become parents, and they should not be obligated to become parents, or even for a woman to give birth if she chooses not to.
So it sounds like it still comes back to responsibility. Because in the choices that we make, there's responsibility. If I choose to have sex, there's a law of procreation that's going to start regardless of how I feel or think about it. So there's responsibility in the act. we're trying to, we want the responsibility of sex, but we don't want the responsibility of the outcome of sex.
We want the pleasure of
So we want
sex
the
without
pleasure
the
without the
responsibility of the
responsibility.
everyone
Precisely,
knows this.
and if you don't, if
And you
are
can't just
in-
have it.
If you are not in a situation where you can actually raise a child, it is irresponsible of you to bring the child into the world and try to raise it. It's kind of like if you go out and
Please.
get a bunch of dogs because you're a dog lover, but you can't adequately care for them. They become sickly. You can't care for them. People think you're irresponsible. Okay? Now, it's in the same way, it is irresponsible to have baby after baby after baby and not be able to care for it. So it's like you are being more responsible by making the choice and saying, you know what, I'm not in a position to be a good parent. I would not be able to care well for this child. Therefore, I choose not to allow this fetus to
And
come
that's
to
a
term.
very good point with that responsibility. But the problem with that is you leaving it up to people to be responsible and they're not. And they don't have the choice to kill because they were irresponsible. So that's another issue.
Responsibility starts before you get pregnant. We don't talk about that. We just say it's okay for the pleasure. Enjoy your pleasure, have the pleasure, but if something happens, you can kill. You can choose now. You should have.
See, and that's a term that I would not use.
Okay,
I would say terminate the pregnancy.
I understand, but it's the same thing.
Here's the deal.
For example.
You have to
Okay,
understand.
please.
Let me make one point real
Yes, ma'am.
quickly about
No problem.
the definition of even an organism.
Mm-hmm.
An organism, if you're going to call a fetus an organism, that fetus has to be capable of homeostasis, which is where they can, in fact, survive outside the womb. Until that point, they're not even an organism. They are developing, as you said, it's a developing body, and if left to natural forces and everything is in happening well, then it will turn into one. And once they survive the rite of passage of pregnancy, I say, yeah, there you've got a baby. There you've got a baby. But until then, without the ability to maintain homeostasis, it's not even by definition an organism. So I come from science, that's why I'm wearing my science shirt.
No problem.
And so
that's
my perspective.
And this is a good conversation. I hope we continue the conversation, but I know the gentleman had to say something too.
Oh, no, we can carry on. That was the point I was going to make, basically, was I'm taking it from a scientific approach. I am a biology professor. Yeah, I mean, on its own, it is not, if it's not viable outside of the womb, it is not a human being. It's not. It is literally, because once you start, you have, you have an ovum and sperm, right? Those are going to combine genetic material, right? Okay, that's the 23rd pair of chromosome. Okay, so once you have that, really all you have is a conglomeration of cells. You're going to go through stages of the blastocell, gastrocell, but ultimately, that is all it is a collection of cells. And even through the entire first trimester, it still doesn't even resemble a human because it's not a human. It is still just a collection of cells. It has no consciousness. It doesn't feel yet. Its nervous system is not developed in the way that you would, as we think of it. There is a neural tube that's starting to form, but that doesn't mean that it feels any pain, has any consciousness, any awareness. It does not exist as I think you see it existing, as just a human.
So pain determines if you're a human?
No. I'm just saying.
And how do you know it doesn't have pain? Because it can't express itself. Just because
the neural networks don't even lay down
Yeah,
until the
yeah.
very last part of the pregnancy.
And then how you know a baby cannot hear? They even say it's based off science a baby can
we
hear.
didn't say that. We were just talking about.
So you agree that the baby can hear inside? Because here's the thing. I was
At
just
what
saying.
stage? I mean,
I'm just saying. Just you said inside. Period. I'm just saying. You say it's not a baby. It just collects your cells until it comes out. So my question is, can it hear? Can the baby inside the womb hear and respond?
Well,
can they kick? Can they move?
Okay. Well, one, I want to make it clear.
Sure.
We're still talking about this this first trimester.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And no, the baby cannot hear at that point.
No, it can't hear.
Can't feel.
Yeah.
So, but you admit it's a baby. You said the baby cannot hear. So
That's a semantic
But
use of the word.
but you see what I'm saying,
don't
though.
try to trick me up. You know what I feel.
Okay, I know you
Okay.
feel, but internally, like you said, internally we know it's a baby because it will go through the process. See, here's what we're saying. Have you ever seen a tumor
Yeah.
turn into a baby?
So what you're getting at is a mass of cells
Turning.
Which is a tumor. Well, a tumor is a mass of cancerous cells.
Turn into a cancerous baby. Does it turn into a baby?
I don't know. Have we waited long enough?
I'm just asking.
I don't know.
Okay, based off I know. Well, based off science, because you're a science man. So based off science, my question is: have you ever seen that turn into a baby?
No.
Okay. That's my point. One of my points is this right here.
Yeah.
Tissue, just tissue, doesn't turn into a cat, dog, or something like that, or a baby.
Okay.
Tumors and so forth does not turn into a baby. It's a tumor. It's a tumor. It's a tumor. A tumor can grow. It can start as a small tumor, correct? And then it can grow into a bigger tumor, correct? But it's still called a what? Tumor. Would you agree?
Yeah.
And a tumor cannot hear, nor fear, nor feel anything. So you have stages of a tumor, but through all the stages, it still continues to be the same thing. It is a tumor. So when we come to a baby, for some reason we want to change that terminology. A baby is a baby, but it has to go through process and stages. It's still a baby, it's just going through a stage, like the tumor. You wouldn't switch the tumor while we switching the baby.
Because they're not the same. You're comparing apples to oranges, basically.
Yeah.
How?
Really
What how?
Because the
Man, I
tumor
wanna
is
ask
made
him.
up of, go ahead. He's the scientist. Talk about the cancer cells.
Well, I mean, yeah. One, you're talking about an abnormal growth within, and cancerous cells happen in all organisms. Okay, I mean, trees. You see knots on trees; those are cancerous cells more often than not. I'm with Kay in this regard that it really is apples and oranges, because what I'm talking about is during this first trimester. It is nothing. Now, like I said, first trimester, we're dealing with one part at a time. It is nothing but a mass of cells. It has no feeling, no personality, no existence whatsoever. No, it cannot hear. No, it cannot feel. There is no neuronal network for that to even happen. So I guess I don't see why you have such an issue with. I'm not saying like just you. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I understand. No problem.
The anti-abortion community, has such an issue with getting rid of a mass of cells. I mean, and I've heard, I've been out there. I've heard a lot of things that people scream. They'll tell you that you can you'll get government assistance, right? I've heard people scream that, right? What's the other one? Just have the baby. Don't worry. We'll take care of it. But those, a lot of the time, these are the same people that are voting to cut federal programs that are actually going to help women. I don't see. I don't see how it can be justified that it's a human at any point in the early stages.
Have you seen the little body part when they rip them out?
Well, I mean, you're talking late stage abortion now.
They about that big or so. Have you ever seen the body part when they take
That
it
is
out?
late stage.
Yeah.
Okay, but have you seen the body parts though?
I keep tons of them in my lab. I have.
And you think it's okay to have body parts look just like humans?
The body part. A lot of things look just like human
Like
in
what?
developmental stages.
Like what?
Just about every embryo in the mammalian
Mammalian
kingdom.
yeah.
Give me some specific example. Don't give me
An elephant looks pretty much the same.
Okay, so now we're
Okay,
gonna do
a
this.
wolf looks pretty much the same.
But we know.
I mean, really.
in the embryonic stage, they almost look identical.
But we know it's not a wolf, and we know this because we have a conscience with knowledge.
We do, but here's the thing. I think what Zach is saying is that
But we know
during
this,
certain developmental
regardless.
stages,
It's a human.
You could say that it's a human. It is not a complete human. It's not even a human that's capable of homeostasis. It is capable of killing the woman in some cases.
So, but the woman is capable of kill the baby too.
If that is
Right. That's what they do. No, that's
what she decides is best.
Okay, so now we have placed the authority based on you bigger and stronger. It's like
Not at all.
like
It's
a prey, right?
I'll put it this way.
Because to love your children,
fetus-
not
fetus has-
tear them to pieces and keep it in the lab. Do you agree?
So no, I don't, because
No,
I think that
Do you have
you're
children?
misunderstanding.
No, I don't have children.
Okay, it's a little bit different perspective. Go ahead.
I think it's.
The perspective if you see, okay,
So
seeing
I think part of the problem
Okay.
here is that,
At the-
from my point of view, I
Please.
feel like the woman's life carries greater value than the life of the fetus. She is already established, she already has a life, she's already got her hopes, her dreams, her aspirations, and if her circumstances, she decides that this is not the right time nor place, then getting rid of the products of pregnancy in the earlier stages is not a problem.
Okay.
It just is not a problem.
So,
Okay.
but what about, no one's talking about, okay, so we're going to look at it from that standpoint. What about the number of women who suffer from depression and suicide and grief because of the loss?
So that's a very small
No,
minority.
it's not.
The vast majority of women,
Well-
in social sciences research, the vast majority of women feel relief. They feel relief.
That may be true, but if we're gonna be honest about it, we can't just say, well, that's a small percentage when we go look it up, and there are vast number of women who are suffering in silence.
And most
So
don't-
they need
most
to
don't
not be
tell.
suffering in silence, okay? So they need to get counseling, but you also have to admit that a lot of women who do give birth suffer from postpartum depression as well.
And so that's what
Okay.
we're looking at, but we don't have postpartum depression from an it. It has to be something that causes grief. So we're looking at it, we're looking at this for life. We're looking at the value
That's what we're
of
talking about,
life.
life.
We're not looking at the value of just what we consider sales. We're looking at life and how it affects every aspect of life. From your life decisions, from the choice of having sex, from everything is about life. And what we're doing is determining what is valuable and what is invaluable.
Right,
That's
and so
really-
it's along every spectrum. It's an area of shades of
So
gray,
that-
and you have starting from the point at which conception occurs, all the way to the point at which a baby is born. Everything in between are shades of gray. So as
How
you go
so?
later into
I
the
wanna-
pregnancy, I'll tell you how.
Well,
There are
that's
very
fine.
different ways that women react to abortions throughout that period. There are women who are very determined not to have a child right now and will generally terminate the pregnancy very early, and it's not a problem. As it gets later and maybe fetal abnormalities are discovered, or if it's determined very late in the pregnancy that the birth of this child is going to kill this woman, those women react very differently. They react very differently. A lot of women want to have their babies, and they can't, because it's either going to die or suffer horribly before it dies, or else it's going to kill them in the process of coming into this world.
And that's a tragedy on both ends.
It totally is.
Like, we're not saying
Absolutely
that's awful. Like, but again, that's the difference between late stage
And
and
early stage.
And here's another thing we have. We spending time, think about it, we are spending time putting a value on life. I
I don't
have-
believe in a black or white world. I
But-
think it is
but-
along
okay.
spectrums of gray.
Okay, but we're spending time, think about it, of valuing life. But in a human race, in history, we always have that same problem. If you're rich and you're poor, you value the rich life and their dreams more than someone who's poor. Based on the color of your skin or your background, they value your life based off these things. That's our human problem. Is that we want to value life. We want to be the judge and the jury of life.
Yeah, so
Correct?
Kind of like let's see. I don't
Sure.
have to have it in my notes
No
here, but
problem.
like kind of like the Crusades in Christianity, where you were basically given access to heaven as long as you went out and killed Muslims, right?
No.
That's what happened in the Crusades.
That is exactly what happened in the Crusades. That's that was a papal decree.
You also, what you have is that they're trying to take over a certain land of Muslims. Have you read about the Quran? When you asked about the Muslims, like I asked you that question. You know about the Quran.
I'm very familiar with.
What is the
numerous
Quran?
religions.
Can I go back?
May I finish? I'm gonna let you, I promise. But I want to answer
I'm gonna
this.
make it-
Because you asked that question. Do you know the Quran tell you to kill the Christians and Jews? You know that, don't you?
Oh, okay.
I got to ask you that question. This is very important.
If we're going to get into that, the Bible, the Quran, they're all equally corrupt in that respect.
Wait,
Totally
because,
are.
because they all say to kill in the name of the God that they believe
Well,
in.
that's not the case. But we have to.
Well, did you not
if we-
read the Old Testament? Did you skip that
Have
one?
you read the New Testament? You skipped that one.
Huh. Okay, so all of a sudden, the Old Testament means nothing, right?
This is what we need to understand. This is one of our basis problems right here, but it's good. Okay.
And I mean, I'm not even just trying to be sarcastic. I mean, just like, where's the line drawn? Because
Okay.
a lot of people pull from the Old Testament,
They do.
especially when it comes
Homosexuality.
homosexuality
That's
out
in the
of
New.
Leviticus.
That's in the New Testament too, in the Book of Corinthians.
Okay, and that's just a letter
Okay.
that Paul wrote.
And then that's just a letter, like you said, it's just as valid. The whole thing. I'm not picking and choosing. Don't.
Okay, so why doesn't
we're
it
not-
condemn slavery? Because it doesn't do that.
We're not going to cherry pick. Then we're going to say, well, you don't know the theme of the entire Bible. You have to understand the theme.
But you don't understand what I do understand about the Bible, so
Okay.
please don't make assumptions.
I accept that. I do accept that comment. Let me rephrase the comment. Is that you have to understand the theme of the whole entire Bible.
You
So-
know what?
so
I actually want to interrupt at this
we
point
can do
because I
that.
still want to ask
Okay, let's go
questions
back.
that I've
Sorry.
got.
Can we-
I do
can-
want to get to this discussion.
Okay, can we put
And I
this
just
on
wanna
pause next
say-
time?
Yeah,
Can
that's
we let
fine.
her
And if
please.
Lindsay wants to make a comment or question, you had a...
Well, I was just going to talk about the value of life.
Yes, ma'am.
Like, when a woman is talking about terminating a pregnancy, she may be, even if you call that determining value of life, it's only as it relates to things that are inside of her body, and you make these assumptions that she hasn't already thought about the science of what's happening, and she hasn't already thought about the repercussions of everything, and like you make the assumption that her decision is less valuable than your decision. And the whole point that I have on this is it has nothing to do with you. And there are people who believe that meat is murder just as sincerely as you believe that abortion is murder, but they're not trying to pass legislation that says that you have to eat tofu, like that you have to find some other option. The whole point is it's not your, like, you are denying a woman her personhood by telling her that you know the decision better than she does.
May I comment?
Please,
Okay.
it's on topic.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'm glad we get back. Okay.
Yeah.
Based off that, what we are saying is that every single person and every person's thought is equally valid, what's called relativism. So we're saying is that if you think one way, you think another way, you think another way, you think another way, since we all think something, we're all different, then therefore they're equally valid and equally true. Therefore, you have removed truth out of any aspect. And therefore, if you think one thing, and you think another thing, and you think another thing, you're saying they're all true, which kick out truth. Instead of truth being truth, and we all have to come into the truth.
Let's define
So,
truth.
one second. I forgot. So what we're saying is that, is there a standard of truth for the human race, or does the human race can live how they want to depending on where they come from, their background, their experiences?
What I'm asking, what is your definition of truth?
Truth has to be established for the human race because we have so much stuff going on. We're so different.
So human beings establish truth?
Human being can establish truth because they're only based on their own experience. For example, if I live in a poor neighborhood and I see a particular thing going on, I establish truth based off this. If you live in the uppity, for example, the suburbs, right, and you see a particular thing, I say uppity for a reason. I'm sorry if I said that.
No, that's cool.
I'm so sorry.
That's cool.
But sometimes I'm kind of blunt. Okay, I apologize. But if you live in that type of area, then what happens? You develop truth based off this. So truth has no. You have no standard. It's based on experiences. Well, experiences change. So that's what we're saying.
To me,
that
what you're describing is perspective, which is not truth.
I agree. Perspective is not truth, nor is relativism. So therefore, in order to have like a company has to have a standard of laws that everybody has to go and submit under. Everyone who comes in, they come into the company, they didn't bring nothing in, they didn't make the company, they didn't build the company. The company set the rules, and everyone comes into the company abides by the rules. And they do what they're supposed to do.
Okay. And
Well-
different societies set up their own systems of government based on the same sort of thing. We have a
Right.
system of laws. We have means by which to enforce them and to punish those or try to fix those who might try to break them. So basically, from what I understand, you're extrapolating this type of system that humans build in order to conduct themselves in large groups, and then saying God has a structure also. It's like projecting a very human thing onto a supreme being and saying this is the way that it's set up. Because we see it here, and all these different human constructs, it must also exist here with God. that's a very human perspective, and it's a logical way of thinking about things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. For me, truth is something that can be proven. Truth is something that has.
That's pretty good. That's very
Yeah,
good.
it can be proven. It's not just something that it's not just an opinion.
I agree.
Or a group of different opinions. What might be true for her is not the same as what's true for him, is not the same as what's true for me. That is a flaw in our perceptions.
That perspective.
Okay? People
true.
can witness the same thing and have very different experiences about it and come to certain truths, but that's not really truth.
Perspective.
That is a perspective.
Now, I agree with that. It has to be proven. So if you believe something that is not proven, cannot be tested, we cannot believe it. Because it's not true, based on what you're saying. I agree. If you believe something that is not proven, cannot be tested, only a perspective, you must now say it is not true, based on what you say. And I agree. Do you not agree with that?
No, because
okay,
if
so they disagree
you
right
can
now.
believe something that you don't have proof in, that's faith.
So that's faith.
That's
Okay, so now she's saying.
But it's not. There are.
Okay,
even
so for
according
faith.
to the dictionary, there are different definitions of faith, and I know where you're going with this because
I didn't
watched,
go anywhere.
I
I'm listening.
watched
This
the
is
Ray
this is
Comfort
good.
thing.
She said prove. You said faith.
No, I'm
This is
not.
good.
No, we're talking about two different things now. I
Okay.
think you were trying to say that.
I want you to say
I
what
think
got
you
to
were
say.
saying that you have to say that something is not true just because you can't prove it. That's what you were just saying, right?
No,
Did I
she's-
misunderstand?
Yes. She
Okay.
said that if it's not proven,
Sorry,
it's not
I
true.
must have missed
It could
this.
be different perspective, but perspective doesn't mean
That's
it's
not what
true.
she said.
Yeah, she did what she said.
She didn't say that just
You
because
said
it's
faith.
not proven, it's not true.
She said truth has to be proven. She specifically said about being proven. You can have different perspectives. Doesn't mean it's true. But proof, she said, truth has to be proven.
Yes.
And you agree.
Yes.
So if you believe something that cannot be proven or tested,
What is that something? I want to see where you're going with this.
But I was just making a clarification of truth. That's what I'm trying to get. We'll go there. I have no problem. But you brought in faith. This is good.
No. I'm not trying to start a whole thing on faith. I'm just trying to separate. I'm trying to say
Okay.
that, like, you.
But do you agree with her then?
I agree that true.
Must be proven.
No.
No?
Okay.
Okay, let me
No,
listen. This is good.
I believe that true is
True?
What, like,
Does it have to be proven or not?
it can be proven.
Does it have to be?
Truth can be proven. It doesn't necessarily that it has been proven yet.
No, I said, does it have to be proven?
She just said it doesn't have to
Does it have to
necessarily
be
be
proven?
proven yet.
Yet.
So
Okay.
it could be proven in the future. So, for example,
okay.
there is a lot of evidence to suggest that the Big Bang is probably the best explanation for how the
That's a
universe
good one
came
to
into
talk about.
being.
Okay.
We don't have every bit of evidence available, and it might be because we're limited in our ability to understand things. But it doesn't mean that it's not necessarily true, simply because we don't have all the evidence available.
Okay. Now, based
Does
off
that kind of get at what you're
Yeah.
talking about?
this is good.
That's where I'm going with
Okay.
this. But I
That's
feel
good.
like I've heard these arguments before, and I'm afraid of how this conversation is going to play out.
Please, don't be afraid. It's a conversation. It's good.
But
Wonderful.
you cannot equate just faith in a science. Before we even get there, you cannot equate believing in a scientific theory with blind faith in like a God.
Yeah, they
Okay.
are not the same.
But
I
wait
just
a
want to
minute.
establish that before.
I don't have blind faith in the God.
No.
You said that. I don't have. Okay, here's the thing. Here's the biggest problem.
I need to stop talking.
No, you're doing wonderful, and you are too. Does it have to be proven? Do you? Imagine, do you believe in something? Do you believe in what you believe in because it's proven, or that you hoping that in the future it will be proven? Like the Big Bang Theory.
I think what I believe about certain things either have been proven or in the process of being proven. There is enough evidence that makes it convincing to me.
Okay, so I would like to. Okay, you.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
sorry.
got-
I
no,
mean, I'll be respectful. I apologize.
No, you're fine. It does have to be evidence based. There
Evidence-based.
does
I
have
like
to
that.
be some type.
I like how you go. Away.
Okay. Repeat the question. I'm sorry. One more time, just to make sure I was answering every aspect.
No problem. You want to repeat? I'll repeat.
Sorry, I
Do-
just
do-
yeah.
Do you believe in something? Does it have to be proven?
For you to believe.
For you to believe it.
You
Does it
have
have to be?
conviction about
Does
it.
it have to be proven for you to believe in something?
Yeah, there has to be some type of evidence. to
Some
support
type. Does it have to be okay?
But evidence has quality.
Right. Has to be
Right.
quality evidence.
Yeah, because I mean, the tobacco company. Just this is
Right.
an example to make
No
case.
problem.
Tobacco companies in the 1960s, intentionally paid scientists to not find anything. That's not quality evidence.
That's what I'm talking
That's
about.
significant. That's good. I mean,
I like.
But-
Yes. Come on. Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I mean, I'm saying not all
They
evidence
paid.
is created
Right.
equal.
Ooh,
Okay.
I like that one.
Well,
That's
you,
good.
You can like that, but I don't.
I'm
think you're
agreeing
gonna
with
like,
you.
Oh, yeah. But you're probably ultimately not gonna like where it's going.
Maybe so, but go ahead, please. I like you though. Listen.
But I mean, eventually.
Yes,
So
sir.
for now, I think I've answered your question.
Yes, sir.
We're gonna get around to
Okay.
this at some point.
But you have to answer that part too about do your belief when you believe something, does it have to be proven?
No, it doesn't, but whenever, like I was saying, truth may not be proven yet, but you can look at evidence and you have to establish the quality for the evidence. But the point that I was trying to make was that my evaluation of that evidence and my belief in it is no more valuable than yours. And so if I want to get an abortion, you're making a heavy assumption that your belief is more valuable than my belief. And
We're gonna go with the evidence to say which one hold the weight of evidence.
and I've determined that this holds more weight.
Okay.
That
But would you agree that evidence has to hold more weight than feelings?
No.
Can my feelings outweigh the evidence?
No, what I'm saying is that
I'm just
everything that
asking.
comes into our brains goes through the limbic system, which is the oldest part of the brain, which is where emotions are stored. Everything that we perceive in our whole lives runs through our emotions first. So we can't separate what we think about and what we experience from our emotions because they are such an integral part of who we are.
Exactly. But here's the question: can evidence of something weigh more the evidence than your feelings?
This is where your brain comes into play, your prefrontal cortex, where you're able to make judgments and to look for reasonable arguments and logic and things like that. And so you make a judgment based on that. But it also involves your emotions. You cannot separate your emotions from that.
Can your emotion be tainted and then taint your judgment?
Tainted, what do you mean?
Like you had a bad experience with something, so now you had a bad experience with somebody who looked a certain way, so now all of a sudden you have a negative attitude towards them.
Sure.
So
Well,
emotions.
I think we clearly see that. I mean, if we're talking about just like racism, blatantly,
Yeah.
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
Clearly
That's
that's
the
true.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's
So
a very tangible
and that's what we're saying. Because of what we see and experience, if I have a bad experience with somebody, if you don't mind, can I use it for example?
You're gonna have to, I guess.
If I had a bad experience with somebody who looked like him, and now my emotions are hurt. So everybody who looked like you, I'll have a negative attitude toward them, and that's my truth. But it's faulty.
No,
and
what
it's
it is
flawed.
basically it's a chemical reaction.
And it's
You're
flawed.
being triggered
Yes.
by an emotion that you experienced
I
in the
agree.
past.
I agree.
Okay? Does it affect the way that you think? Absolutely.
Yes, but
Absolutely.
it's not.
But does it have to be permanent?
I agree. It does. You're right. But what it is not truth. But I think it's truth because of my experience. So I'm taking what I think is true and apply it to everyone else because of my experience. So my experience and emotion are flawed, and I'm holding it as truth and want to push it off on everybody who reminds me of that person. Let me give it.
So how is this
more.
related to abortion?
Okay. How it relates to abortion? It's the same thing. If, let's say, you had a bad experience with a man, bad experience, then you kind of negative towards men. So now you say, I don't want to have this, so I think it's okay. The man hurt me, my emotions are riled up, and I think, you know what?
So are you suggesting that
I can have
the
an abortion.
experience
So-
of all women who need to have an
No, this
abortion?
is an example. That I can justify what my actions, regardless of evidence, because of my experience. Many people do that. They don't know technical nothing. They ain't scientific. Most people
But there
ain't
is
know
evidence
that stuff.
out there which says, for example, if you go ahead and allow a baby to come to fruition, well, you are in a bad relationship with somebody, it's going to be bad for everybody concerned. There is evidence for that,
And there's
based on historical precedent.
And there's evidence of people coming out of bad situations because someone gave them hope
Oh, sure.
and gave them love
Sure.
and gave them grace and gave them forgiveness and began to speak.
So what does
and
that got to
treat
do with a woman deciding to get an abortion?
But because here's the thing, you can choose to terminate or choose to give opportunity of hope and love and peace to someone they give to you.
Or maybe the termination actually gives you hope and love and the ability to live a life that is much more productive. Because that's a lot of times that is what happens.
And
in
we believe
circumstances.
and a lot of times we always think of self versus giving to someone else.
No, myself, because I can give you an example. I've had an abortion. I was in college when it happened. It happened about a year and 3 months before I was going to graduate. There was no way where I was at that time that I could have finished school, that I could have done anything except struggle with this baby, because the man was just a bed buddy to me. We were out having fun. Birth control failed, as it sometimes does. I was in no position economically, emotionally, in any way, shape, or form to give birth to a child. And I needed to finish my college. Now, am I being selfish? Or is it more like, if I finish college, that gives me the ability to go out and help all these other people? I have helped thousands of people throughout the years in my career. Thousands. And I would never have been able to do that if I had been forced to have a child and live in poverty and struggle.
So not only your quality of life, but the quality of life of thousands of other people
That I have
improved
affected.
based on one action.
Exactly.
Based on one action, so now we justify this way. I scratch out your life. I can help you, but I can also at the same time scratch out other lives, little lives trying to come in. So when you look at quality of life, you also have to look at the whole picture. Many times we look at self picture. We look at self. Self is number one, self is number two, and self is number three.
It's called a survival instinct, I think.
Survival animal instinct is to eat the prey. Eat that with
Well, that's
weaker
part of
than-
survival, but there are other aspects of survival.
And so abortion is the same thing. How we look at it is you are devouring the weaker one.
No.
It's
What I'm
weaker and it's
doing-
smaller because
I'm
for
not devouring at
self-survival.
all.
Self-survival
You
says...
know what, you could put it that way, but actually in the animal kingdom, you see evidence of animals eating their young when they know they cannot care for them. That's abortion in the animal world.
And
Okay.
look at what a human is doing. But a
We
human,
are
what's it?
stopping a pregnancy because we know we can't take care of
The
it.
animal knows a baby, but the human says it's not a baby. They both,
That's just-
and they both.
we don't know what the animal thinks.
The animal
don't
knows
know
it's a
that?
baby. The animal devours the child,
How do you?
right?
What do you base that on?
Right.
Where do you get the animal's knowledge from? Like, how did you
So
come
you-
to that conclusion?
so
that
you
you
see
think
the-
the animal thinks.
So you see the animal licking the baby and stuff like taking care of it, but we find out
unless they turn around and eat it.
and they find out it can't survive, then it eats it. Correct. So it acknowledges, and the animal had baby. The animal knows the process. They know how to get food. Correct. The animal knows these. They know how
Most
to
of
go.
them do, but some of them
they
make
know how to
lousy
find
parents, kind of like humans.
They know because you're a lousy parent doesn't give you the right to kill someone weaker than you. Your abilities doesn't give the justification to dismantle or say I'm gonna push you aside for myself.
I think it does. I think it absolutely does.
So,
this is
if I'm
my
weaker-
life. I'm an autonomous human being. Okay, my life is already established. I have hopes and dreams and aspirations that I want to work toward that ultimately are going to help a whole bunch of other people.
So I could devour other people weaker than me. So
one
to rise
one
up.
pregnancy
Now, it's-
terminated one
And-
pregnancy.
It's not.
It's not like I'm doing this over and over and over and over again.
I agree.
And most women don't do it over and over and over
But then
again.
you support to build up others to do likewise. So if one person said this,
Absolutely. If that's
If-
going to make their life better
if-
and they can ultimately help other people,
A lot of
it
people-
becomes a chain reaction that explodes and blossoms out. It becomes exponential.
exactly.
Okay,
So
I stopped one thing in my life from coming to term, and that allowed me to blossom into the individual that I am now. And I have helped, like I said, thousands of people. That would not have happened.
and most of the time we
I would have
don't.
brought misery to myself and to this child.
Most
And
of,
how do you justify that?
but most of the time we don't believe in things like forgiveness because we don't experience it. You can't give that which you have not received. So if someone doesn't give forgiveness to another person, it's hard for us to give forgiveness.
What does
to
that have to
someone.
do with the decision that was made in order
Well-
to better my life that would allow me to better other people's lives?
Okay, betterment is based on your terminology of betterment.
I think the vast majority of people I've worked with would say that I have helped them.
And-
I think we would be in agreement.
Well,
there.
that was. We were just reading this. If I took the Bible this time, I would say it says every man proclaim their own personal goodness. Every man think their own way is right. It says every way of a man is right in his own eyes. So what we're looking at, while we're talking, you're telling me in my eyes, good. In my eyes, right. In my eyes, help. In my eyes. Everything that has come out is only been saying, and you actually confirm in the book of Proverbs, actually when it says this about it. And this was written a long time ago, way before even Christ's birth. But everything it's saying is saying, I'm saying it's good because it's my own ways and my viewpoint. Well, you had just confirmed the Bible, and it said, but there's a way that appears to be right. There's a way that appears to be right, but the end is not right. It's wrong, it's death. But it appears that way. So when we say these right here,
So the fact that I was helping all these people throughout my life and my career, that's all been bad and wrong and evil?
and this is what we're saying, is that we're trying to justify I'm gonna say murder and say to help these, but at the same time promote you to kill these.
One.
No, help, so I say support, not do no more. You say you stop, you say one.
I would have had
Okay.
another one though if it had come to that. If I had been in a situation where I can't care for that. That is the merciful thing to do.
And his,
Otherwise, it is absolute cruel. It's completely cruel.
that sounds like Margaret
To-
Sanger.
I'm not going to get into Margaret
in her
Sanger with you,
theology.
okay? Because
Okay,
I
but it
think
sounds
she's
like
been
her.
misquoted quite a lot. But
Okay, we can look at it.
I
But it
can
sounds
tell
like
you-
her though. When I researched her, it sounded like her theology when she taught, when she formed it. So that's, I was gonna make that statement. It sounds like her thinking when it came down to babies. He said people who are not gonna be good parents, or people who are poverty in certain classifications she put people in, didn't deserve to have babies. It sounds like her. I'm gonna say it that way. It sounds very, very, very similar to her way of
Okay,
thinking.
I would not say that just because everybody might be in my situation would make the same decision. That is
Right.
their right. People who are living in extreme poverty, if they want to have babies, that is their right. But if they decide that they don't want to have babies, that is also their right. That is my feeling on
and I
this.
feel sorry for the baby because the baby cannot defend itself.
The baby doesn't even know any different. The baby that was developing in my womb, that was aborted at, I believe it was about 9 weeks, knew nothing. No consciousness, no sensory perception whatsoever.
Barely
Nothing.
neuronal.
And
too.
what happened to
Barely.
what about an elderly person who's in a hospital and they in an unconscious state where they don't know nothing? Can you just pull the plug and say forget you?
Well, I mean,
Depends on what their wishes were.
Right.
That's why I
Yeah,
have
I
an
mean,
advance
they wouldn't-
notice. I
they
have an
wouldn't-
advance directive.
Right, they
saying,
don't got
pull
no
that
advance.
plug.
No, they have no advance notice or
It's up
nothing.
to the
They can't
family
make
then.
they can't make no decisions and stuff like that. I mean,
It's up to
is
the
it just
family.
is it just
if
is-
the person has been declared brain dead, I think it really is up to the family to make that decision. You know, why would you continue on? I mean, this poor woman who had been brain dead for how many years? It seemed
Terry
like.
Chavo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so
Honestly, I think it's that in itself is a very selfish act. And that's not that person, because that person clearly doesn't have a choice. It's a selfish act on the family's part to sit there and basically keep a corpse alive. You know?
Because they can through
and
science.
and you're wasting resources and potentially organs that could have been used to save someone else's life.
so what I want to do. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to make a point from
Yes, sir.
from earlier.
Yes, sir.
Like the difference is like I think we're all on the same side of we want to protect and save human lives. Nobody wants to kill anyone, but the thing is, you know, a fetus is not a human. It's just not. I mean, by biological definition, any definition, it's not a human. So when you say, you know, this whole killing the weaker thing, I think that's. I mean, it's a disconnect we're probably not ever going to be able to bridge the gap on.
But I
Yeah,
have
it's
a
an
but,
empty
but, but,
argument.
but before that, I have a question though. Are you open to new evidence about what you just said?
Well, I mean, if it's actual evidence
right.
and not just rhetoric.
Right. That's what I'm talking about. Are you open to evidence? I want to ask all
Well, see,
three.
that's
Are
the
you,
thing.
Well, I
If
just
there
wanna
is
ask-
evidence that is contrary to my current understanding of things,
Yes.
and that evidence is considered absolutely valid, then you bet I'll change my mind. And that's something different that fundamentalists typically won't do. They can be presented with all kinds of evidence to the contrary and still cling to their belief.
Because
even though it's
cognitive
wrong.
dissonance happens.
Okay,
Well,
so
they
Yeah.
pride
my
themselves in it.
so that's what okay I don't think it has a bad experiences. Okay, I can tell, but it's okay. Okay, but what I'm saying is right here. If there's evidence, you know how we talk. You know how, for example, I want to go back way back to you said the Big Bang, for example. Go back and I'll leave. When you mentioned that you admit that there's no evidence, but at the same time you took other things, but missing that. If there's evidence of that beginning point, that build up greater than what you currently believe, will you be willing and open to say nothing cannot create something? Because your worldview determines how you live your life, your worldview, your beginning stages, how you think you started, how you think you're going to end, and what's going to happen afterwards. All these things are valid. Yes. So my question is that will you also be open to evidence? Evidence, not my opinion. Please, I'm not that old enough nor smart enough to even come up with everything. Would you be open for that worldview? I'm not sorry. Will you be open for that evidence if there's evidence about that particular thing to change your worldview, your thinking of that is not just nothing that creates something to create order, but there's actually an intelligent mind that started it.
Well, that's what we're all saying. Is
right.
if there is actual evidence,
yes, sir,
we're gonna look at it. We're gonna take it and interpret. Like that's never
the way I go through my life.
Yeah, if that is what my life is based on as a scientist, is evidence. If there's ever new evidence, I'm never afraid to admit that I was wrong on something.
Okay.
If something new can show
fair.
me.
That is fair. Yes, sir.
Well,
yes,
yeah.
That's good. Mm-hmm.
Now I know, Leanne, you have more questions. At a couple just some point in today, I would like to touch on that evolution video.
Oh yeah, that'd be a fun one. I think I've
go
just
ahead.
got.
I have some.
Okay,
some,
I like
some
you guys.
questions.
So,
yes, ma'am.
all right, I've got another question about abortion in particular. The Bible never uses the term abortion. It alludes to it a couple of times. Once in, I believe, the book of Numbers, where they talk about the law of jealousies. I don't know if you're familiar with that. This is where a man who suspects his wife may have cheated on him can take her down to the tabernacle and make her drink this swill, and if her thigh rots, and I mean, it was just all this crazy stuff. Anyway, it's like an abortion potion, basically. It basically is supposed to prove whether or not the woman was faithful to her husband. And that's one allusion to abortion in the Bible. But elsewhere, the only other parts where they talk about it is where God's soldiers are commanded to rip apart women with child. Now, from some of the other fundamentalists that I've spoken with, they all believe that the difference between all of the murders and the rapes and the pillaging that is described in the Old Testament and abortion is different, is that abortion involves what they call an innocent life. The fetuses in those women, according to that belief, were also innocent, and yet it's somehow sanctioned by God. So I'm wondering how you can assert that God is against abortion if he sanctioned it himself in cases involving the Bible.
Okay, well, first, we love to take, we can take things out of context of what's going on. When you, first of all, not believing the existence of God already, going to give him a bad name. So when I try to explain this, when it's going to make things look like you're just making stuff up because you already don't have the fundamentals of believing that he exists. Or may I add?
No, this is taken directly from the biblical passages.
Okay.
The thing that I sent you, that document that I sent to you, has those passages written out in them where God's soldiers are commanded to rip apart these women with child.
Okay. That explains the character. You want to go to?
Well, there's something important about, one of the things about the Bible that we don't understand is that, first, if we don't understand in the character and nature of God, when we read the Bible, it's going to sound foolish. So if we take something out of context, without the understanding of it, it's not going to make sense.
So what is the context of ripping women with children apart using swords?
Well, here's the thing. When we read in the Old Testament, these are shadows and types that must be revealed to us. Now, if you're trying to
Can you rephrase that, because I don't.
Yes. Okay.
Shadows and tides. That says nothing to me.
I know. And,
Yeah.
okay. So I want to. So when I say there's some things that we say, are not going to make sense to our minds. Okay. So because one of the things is important for us to understand that this Bible that is written is spiritual in nature. Now, science and trying to reason it may not make sense to you. Okay, so when I say a type or a shadow, what that means is what I read and see may be an example, or it may be a character or something that I have to go research in the New Testament. So a lot of people read a lot of killing in the Old Testament, and that's a turnoff if all of you see is the consequence and the shedding of blood. Agreed. I'd agree on that.
Yeah, or the fact that you can beat a slave within an inch of his life as long as it's a rod no wider than that.
Okay, so there are some writings that are written in the Old Testament that talks a lot about this killing. What we don't understand or has to be revealed to us within the context of the scriptures is a lot of that alludes to an enemy that's revealed to us in the New Testament called Satan. So a lot of the killing, when he said the enemy, was actually the enemy of this spiritual world. Now,
you think the Philistines were the enemy of the spiritual world?
Yes, and that's revealed to us in the context of the Old Testament. Now, what I understand.
I'm trying to follow. I really am. I'm not trying to be disregarding.
So even understand this. Even when we talking to Christians, many Christians don't understand what I just said to you, and they're Christians. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I want to slow it down so you can understand really what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I want to understand your point of view.
And so and even for us, now get this, I'm not going to claim to say I understand every bloodshed and everything that was said unless I took the time to go research it. Okay. But I do know, and I do understand and know that a lot of what we were seeing is an example of something greater that was going to be revealed later on in the scriptures. So for enemy, in the book of Psalms, it talks a lot about this enemy. And there's this man called King David, which did a lot of killing and a lot of fighting.
And a little bit of adultery.
Right.
Yeah.
To show that he wasn't a perfect man, that he did fail in the things that he did.
Yeah, and then God didn't even give him time to tell Solomon anything.
Well, you forgot that he actually repented toward God, because God sent him Nathan to tell him his sin.
Yeah. Well,
so you forget that part. That's very important. So think about what God is saying. He said, you have made a mistake. You've done something wrong. You allowed your flesh to override. That's against God. God didn't do anything bad. To know he did. He sent him somebody to speak to him, to bring to awareness what you've done, and he got right with God. If you go,
but he really did a lot along the way.
Good, no, that's good. No, go ahead.
So this is in 2 Samuel.
Let him
Thus says the
express.
Lord, I will bring evil upon you out of your own house. I will take your wives while you live to see it, and will give them to your neighbor. He shall lie with your wives in broad daylight. You have done this deed in secret, but I will bring it about in the presence of all Israel and with the sun looking down. And then David said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. Nathan answered David, the Lord on his part has forgiven your sin. You shall not die. But since you have utterly spurned the Lord by this deed, the child born to you must surely die. And the child dies about 7 days later.
Yeah,
that's some wicked, nasty stuff going on.
Well, but when you understand, he's saying that you have done a deed. There's still consequence. I forgive you, but the consequence still will go on.
So he kills an innocent child.
But he made up these consequences. He completely made up these consequences out of his
own. Go back to the Ten Commandments and go back to the very beginning. He's already established it. Mankind has a rebellious spirit, and so we talk about the enemy. He wants you to rebel against God. The whole thing about this enemy is for mankind to rebel against him.
Do you realize that actually the understanding that is common right now of Satan, which back in the day was called the Satan, which meant the opposer. So just somebody who is in opposition. Okay, that was from the ancient Hebrew text. The Satan that we understand now with the horns and the evil and totally all that, completely evil, all the presence of evil is all within Satan, and Satan is, all this. That didn't even occur to people in their beliefs until about the time of the Middle Ages. So it has evolved quite a bit.
Well, not the word evolved, it's that the revelation of things takes time sometimes. I give you an example in the Bible.
That's not evolution?
No, it's
No.
revelation. Meaning.
No, I know the difference between something evolving and something being revealed.
Okay,
Yeah.
so-
But it's an evolution of thought, is what I'm saying.
No. Okay, so allow us to explain what a because we had this discussion
We sure
with
did.
another brethren
Yes.
about this idea of revelation.
And when you miss the revelation, you get confusion.
See, revelation of the Bible has to be, okay, let me see if I can say it like this, okay. God's word is based on a relationship, okay. Now, not a relationship like we perceive. It's very easy for us to say relationship, and we can look at it from our point of view, okay. So, okay. So, when we're talking about the revelation of the word, God has to reveal what this means in the context of the word. And many people, believers and non-believers, Christians and non-Christians, read things out of context and they put their own understanding to it. So a revelation is not based on evolution, because the revelation comes from God himself.
So let me ask